Here, but he will be vacationing much more to visit family and friends. So Mr. Petree has done an amazing job building relationships with both adults and children. He has helped bring importance and just a wealth of knowledge to, once again, the young, the old, in terms of our military and what all that encompasses and how blessed we are to be part of this wonderful nation. He does a great job with the Veterans Program each year, and I'm not certain how they're going to do that next year. I hear volunteer. Anyway, he is a wonderful part of this community, and he will be missed greatly. Mr. Wade Petree.
Wow. Good evening, and thank you for being here tonight as Sherry Crabtree and I prepare for new chapters in our lives. Before I get into the heart-wrenching challenge of expressing how grateful and appreciative I am to have been a part of the school for the past 16 years, just know that if you see a tear or two rolling down my cheeks tonight, they are not coming from an old man standing up here. They belong to the little boy inside of me, who never dreamed he would be standing before you 50 years later in a crowd this big with that admiration. My heart can't handle it. As many of you are aware, prior to beginning my teaching career in 2007, I volunteered 22 years of my life to be a United States Army soldier. During my life, I have heard many retirement speeches, and for those people who chose a career helping others, people will often say, what a remarkable career. He or she chose to make a living in service to others for a blank number of years. I believe that the word service implies an obligation. For the past 38 years, I have had the privilege of caring for others. I hope you're not too tired. If you need to sit down, go ahead. Every morning on my walks, I've been thinking what to tell you, and I can't get it all out. In order to give you a point of reference as to where I've come from, where I have been, and what has made me the man I am today, I need to put on my teacher hat and share a history lesson with you. I was born in Columbus, Indiana in 1958. Due to the fact that my mother and father were both teenagers, they were ill prepared for my arrival into this world. Shortly after I was born, my mother and father had no home to call their own, so my Uncle Bill offered them the use of a converted chicken coop on his farm, which was located in southern Indiana. Please don't feel sorry for me. I like to tell myself that I started out the same way Jesus did. Stables, chicken coops are all the same. Unfortunately, that was the end of our similarity because I have spent many more decades afterwards striving to live more like Christ. Because I had the misfortune of having a father who was unwilling to be a dad, my mother became my sole parental guiding light. As a side note to those students who have the good fortune to have two loving parents encouraging and supporting you, I hope that you know how fortunate you are. If not, the future will probably show you. This past Sunday, Americans across the country celebrate the backbone and heartbeat of many families, moms. In light of that, I now return to one of my favorite things to talk about, and that's my mother. For the biggest part of my childhood, she raised 6 children by herself and without the benefit of a college degree or a high school diploma. It was her willingness to work up to 3 jobs that didn't require a high school diploma so that she could keep the 6 kids under one roof, clothes on her back, and a little food in their stomachs. She also taught me that if you're going to get somewhere in life, you better be ready to work hard. Back in the 60s, there weren't as many charitable organizations helping others as there is today. In those days, if you didn't have at least a high school diploma, you would probably be working for minimum wage, and I think back then it was around $2 an hour. And often it would be up to family members who kept children out of adoption homes. But after having started her family, the lessons she taught me, even though she never went back to school, those lessons are still in my heart and still guiding me today. I mentioned earlier that hard work is what helped me to find success in life. Now let me expound on that. From the time I was old enough to stand behind a push lawnmower and go door to door. By the way, that push lawnmower had no engine to it. It's all manual. As a young kid in middle school, I got a job delivering newspapers. It didn't pay much, but it allowed me to buy many of my own school clothes, school supplies, school lunches. Because of our low family income and my personal pride, I didn't want to accept the government-sponsored school lunches. By the time I entered high school, I had a new place of employment and the first job where Uncle Sam started taking part of what I was making. While in high school, I gave up the paper route and began working as a gas station / car wash attendant. This job paid all of $1 per hour. I didn't complain, but then again, I probably did. By this age, I was smart enough to figure out that 100 pennies was still better than 0 pennies. The desire to earn money could have easily caused me to drop out of high school, because in my senior year, I would often skip school in order to pick up a few extra hours at the gas station. I ended up getting suspended from school because I missed too much, and even though I had more than enough credits to graduate, I didn't have the right credits. Because my grandmother had never attended a high school graduation ceremony for any of her 6 children or numerous grandchildren, great-grandchildren, I was not going to allow that to keep me from getting suspended, be the reason why her streak continued. I enrolled in an evening history class in order to meet my graduation requirements. And more importantly, so that my grandmother and my mother finally had the opportunity to celebrate the educational achievement of one of their own. The red tie I have on right now, that's from 1976, so yes, a little bit outdated, but my grandmother bought that because I didn't have a tie to wear to graduation or anything. Thank you. Due to the fact that I decided to follow in my footsteps and become a married teenager, shortly after high school, I had to find a new and better paying job. Thanks to a family friend, I was able to acquire employment working in a factory in Cincinnati, which made floor and bathroom wall tiles. I would remain with the Cambridge Manufacturing Tile Company for over 7 years, but there was an inner drive and 2 young sons lighting a fire inside of me to pursue something higher than working in a factory for the rest of my life. My younger brother Larry had joined the Army and was traveling the world seeing things that he and I used to see on TV and dream about. That inspired me to follow in his footsteps and give it a try. It was a perfect fit for me. I like structure and personal accountability, so it didn't take long for me to realize that I was where God wanted me. As a matter of fact, one of the strongest examples of God ever speaking to me happened one night while I was in basic training. Our drill sergeants would often encourage us to give up and quit. And that was a way of weeding out the weak. Many guys did quit because we began basic training with 60 in our platoon, and by the time we completed airborne school, we were down to about 40. Some of the trainees did get injured, but most voluntarily quit and returned home. Today, I can still vividly recall waking up from a dream in which I was being kicked out of the Army. I remember sitting up in my bunk and thinking to God that it was only a dream. Because I felt that if I failed there, I was going to fail in life. The Army fulfilled all my needs, and I ended up turning the opportunity into a 22-year career. When soldiers are promoted in the Army, they are often sent to advanced leadership schools to prepare for their new responsibility. In 1987, my promotion to sergeant sent me to the primary leadership development course in El Paso, Texas. By then, I had learned that if I'm given an opportunity to meet the standards or exceed them, I need to go higher, and go higher in order to rise above my peers. This mentality resulted in being selected as an undergraduate for the leadership course. What I didn't see was an invitation to become an instructor at the school I had just completed. The decision in 1987 to accept this offer was God's way of leading me to Christ the King 30 years later. In 2007, I finally completed the bachelor's degree, which I had begun pursuing 20 years earlier. With that degree in hand, I decided after spending the past year as a full-time college student, it was time to enter the job market once again. While going to school at the University of Central Oklahoma and working on a master's degree, I periodically would review the online job board for teaching positions. One day, a position for a computer teacher was posted in a private school in Nichols Hills. When I saw the word Catholic in the name of the school, I immediately thought to myself, there probably isn't any use for me applying to that job. Then I recalled, the Catholics like wine, right? My interview with Mrs. Norma Kramer, and at the conclusion of it, I asked her when they would be making a decision. And she said, if you want the job, it's yours. We shook and I left. She told me at that time, I'm sorry, I was stunned. That's what it was. A week or two later, I stopped by the school to discuss the job with the outgoing computer teacher. And I saw the principal, Miss Kramer, emptying her office and loading boxes into her car. My first thought was, oh hell, they fired her for hiring this old guy. During my time at Christ the King, I have experienced many more highs and lows. But after hanging up my uniform for the last time, I thought the pain of suddenly losing people close to me would end. That sadly didn't occur, as we saw last week. In the Army, when you're in a leadership position and you have troops assigned to you, their personal responsibility is my number one job. That mentality never left me when I became into the classroom in 2007. Every student that has been enrolled at Christ the King during my tenure has become my responsibility to protect and to look out for their well-being. As I told a friend, this hurts because when you love hard, it hurts harder. And there is an exponential increase of pain and grief when you have to say forever goodbye to a child. I know this because I witnessed my mother do that. My sister Cheryl was killed in an automobile. In Florida. In memory of the 5 students, Tommy Wolf, QT Dolan, Super Stan Early, Adam Ward, and Luke Winnicky, who are no longer with us, would you please join me in a minute of silence for their departed souls? Thank you. It is my guess that if you ask people why they chose to become teachers, the majority of the answers are pretty close to the same. Somewhere along the lines of to make a positive impact upon the lives of children. Even though it has been more than 50 years, I can still see the faces and hear the voices of a few male teachers that everyone thought highly of at my school and considered to be positive role models. Thank you, Coach Bill Sharp, Mr. Bill Brown, retired United States Navy, and Bob Austin. On the flip side, of course, there were plenty of female teachers who helped me in my journey through childhood. But because I had a loving mother, grandmothers, and aunts, I may not have looked up to them as much as I did those 3 gentlemen. One of my biggest reasons to become a school teacher was so that I could pay it forward on their behalf to any child who needed a hug, a smile, a reality check, and sometimes a come to Jesus meeting. Right, Hutch? Children are very impressionable, and for that reason, students can never have too many positive role models. When I was growing up, I was taught to be respectful and kind to older people, and was told that many of them have a lot of wisdom to offer those willing to listen. Well, I am now one of those older people. Did you notice I didn't say older with wisdom? That was intentional, but that's not going to keep me from trying to impart some more lessons to you this evening. What were you expecting? I'm a teacher. Now on to the final lesson of my teaching career. There are two things that have been critical in my development: my faith and my perseverance. In regard to my faith, it remained underdeveloped for almost half my life. As a child growing up, the only time I ever went to church was with some neighborhood friends. The only memory I have of going to a church with all my family was for a wedding. Approximately 30 years ago, I formally accepted Christ as my Savior by being baptized in a swimming pool on MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. While I haven't been a perfect Christian since then, His Spirit has always remained with me and has instilled a belief that I am worthy of His love, protection, and guidance. God often comes to us through other people, and so when you find yourself lacking in one of these areas, that is often the time to do less talking and more listening. As I have told many of my students, God only gave you one mouth, but he gave you 2 ears because he felt it was more important to listen twice as much as you talk. Last month, while watching a video in one of my current events classes, a woman from a third world country said, when you grow up in poverty, you see yourself as less than. That hit home. I was in my mid-20s and a father of 2 sons when I decided to make some short-term sacrifices in order to reap long-term gains and to prevent my children from living in poverty. I think that my high school guidance counselors might have also seen me as less than. Not one of them ever sat down with me and discussed the idea of going to college. They probably didn't see me as college material, and if he had asked me back in the mid-70s, I probably would have agreed with him. Once I joined the Army, that tune changed dramatically. It was a brand new world. I was encouraged to go to college. I had the opportunity to serve under some great leaders in the Army, but more importantly, many of them were great role models. And for a young man who grew up without the guidance of a loving dad, they had an immediate and positive impact. In this new world, I would earn numerous awards and medals for what I merely thought of as doing my job, which leads me to the second attribute, perseverance. If I could say there was one thing that I did well and allowed me to experience some success from time to time, it would probably be my willingness to not quit when I failed at something the first time. The exception to that would be my grades prior to college, though. They weren't very good. As a little boy, I loved the game of baseball, but I can still remember crying my eyes out on a Saturday night back in the early 70s. The reason was that in order to become a member of the Little League team, you had to try out. I never got the phone call saying that a coach had picked me to be on their team. But that didn't prevent me from becoming a pretty good softball player as an adult, and I was often recruited to play on tournament teams throughout Southwest Ohio. Perseverance was going to basic training and being so uncoordinated at marching and unable to stay in step that they pulled me out of the march for the graduation parade. But that didn't prevent me from becoming the lead member of a 4-star General's Color Guard 5 years later. Oh, by the way, I looked up the word uncoordinated. It read as follows: different parts failing to work or move together. The drill sergeant was right. I was pretty damn uncoordinated. If you still have doubt, ask my family members who have seen me try to bust a move. Hell, the last time I was on a dance floor, someone thought I was having a seizure and called 911. In 1991, I competed to be the U.S. Special Operations Command Service Member of the Year and lost. I was pretty devastated, but in all honesty, I was a runner-up to a better soldier. Afterwards, I reviewed Staff Sergeant Jeter's resume to see what areas he was better than me and decided to up my game. It paid off. In 1992, I was selected as the United States Special Operations Command Service Member of the Year. Lastly, on the subject of perseverance, earlier I mentioned that in the Army I was encouraged to attend college. In 1987, at the age of 29, I returned to the classroom for the first time since high school. Keep in mind that at that time there was no World Wide Web for online education, and due to the needs of the Army, I wasn't often able to work in places or jobs which permitted me to go to school at night. I didn't let that stop me from completing what I started. In 2009, I completed my college education with a master's degree. One thing that life has taught me is that we are truly equal in God's eyes. In time, I will experience one more retirement, and that will be from this world. God, I know these people are getting tired of listening to me, but if my time is near, would you mind waiting till I finish these comments? I would like to share a quote by an unknown author with you. Your soul doesn't care what you do for a living, and when your life is over, neither will you. Your soul only cares about what you are being or you're doing whatever you're doing. When I leave, I won't be taking my truck, my credit cards, none of my diplomas, or any other worldly possessions. But because of all the people gathered here tonight, I will leave with a heart full of love. I hope that I haven't put anybody to sleep yet. Okay, before you happens, let's move on to thank you. One of the challenges of the speech of gratitude is the inability to identify all the people that have contributed to who you are and made your life better. So if I leave your name out, don't take it personal. Where I come from, if you personally knew a police officer by name, that usually wasn't a good sign. I've never been arrested, so my only interaction growing up was for a few speeding tickets. While I have always respected law enforcement, my admiration and respect for them grew from my opportunity to work beside two of Oklahoma County's finest, Sergeant Crawford and Deputy Singley. Would you please stand if they're here? They're probably already standing. Are they here? All right. Thank you for both of you for always making me look smarter than I am in front of the students. That challenge alone should have qualified you for a raise or a promotion. For those not familiar with the military's ranks system, there are three different groups of ranks. The enlisted ranks is where the majority of people serve because it doesn't require a college degree. There are exceptions of people who join the enlisted ranks, such as Pat Tillman, who used to play football in the NFL for the Arizona Cardinals. And he dropped out of that game to become an Army Ranger and served as an enlisted soldier because he wanted to be where the action is. Most of my peers in the enlisted ranks often said that the best warrant and commissioned officers are those who previously served in the enlisted ranks. The exception to that is those who spend 4 years of their life in a college ROTC program or those who graduate from one of the military academies. I think I've had at least 6 or more go through that route. Another student told me the other day, some reason he saw something that I said or did. He has now graduated the other night. He's going to be going off to the United States Air Force Academy. That's pretty cool. The reason is that before pinning lieutenant bars on their uniforms, they want everybody to get a taste of what it's like to be an enlisted soldier and not to forget where they came from. That mentality never left me. A good friend of mine who I met at Christ the King, and that many of you know, Mrs. Lewis told me the following story about her son-in-law's integration into the family business that we know as Love's Truck Stops. She told me that prior to being elevated to an upper-level management position, he had to start at the bottom by waiting on customers, cleaning the store and bathrooms, cooking hot dogs, etc. I think that we all have known people who think their position in life makes them better than others. I don't concern myself with that. God will be their judge. I have tried to treat each person I meet with the same level of respect and dignity because many of them are performing jobs that they never wrote down on their "what do you want to be when you grow up" assignment. So to the ladies and gentlemen who feed our students lunch each day, who clean the bathrooms, hallways, cafeteria, classrooms of our school, thank you. To the ladies in the front office who constantly answer the ringing telephone, apply bandages to wounds that they can't see a dot of blood on, and who greet each visitor that walks through the front door with kindness, I extend a heartfelt and grateful thank you. It is often said that if an organization is performing good or bad, you don't have to look very far, just look to the top. Before I conclude my final few days as a full-time teacher at Christ the King, I have to take a moment to single out the leadership of Christ the King. I have been blessed to have the opportunity to be a part of an outstanding team you've created here. If the following people are present, would you please hold your hand? Karen Carter, Robert Crump, Dr. Jenny Richard, Katie Bright, and CK's #1 cheerleader, Amy Feeney. Thank you. Thank you for helping me in my transition from soldier to teacher. In my working career, I never experienced working under the same supervisor more than 3 years. Sometimes that can be a blessing, though. Sometimes that all changed when I began my career at Christ the King, and I definitely benefited immensely from each of you. Thank you. While I am on the topic of those who helped me in this career, thank you to my fellow educators for teaching me that barking commands as students might not go over well as it did in the Army. Karen Carter was right. I need to lower it down a little bit. In all seriousness, I have often said that no matter how many hours you sit in a college classroom, your ability to become an effective teacher won't happen until you have spent at least a year or more in front of those students. I remember in my early years of teaching, going to different classrooms and watching a lot of you, how you did your job. Sometimes I was in there because I wanted to learn from you, and other times you had a tech issue that you needed assistance with. I was still watching. Another joy of being in one place for so long was the gift of being able to watch many of my younger co-workers and friends get married and or increase the size of their family. As a side note, for all of you who had children in the 7th or 8th grade during my time, and you encouraged them to sign up for my class, the Department of Child Services would like to talk to you after this meeting. While I'm on the topic of co-workers, let's talk about the leadership selecting this old soldier as this representative to compete for the Archdiocese Teacher of the Year a while back. You each have a legitimate right to complain about that. How that decision was made might be as controversial as some of our country's recent elections. On a more serious note, whenever I walk through this school and watch my fellow educators doing their job of managing and teaching these children, I would often feel like a bench player on a team of all-stars. To the parents here tonight who seldom get the opportunity to witness my friends doing their job of guiding their children through their education, I can assure you that they are very capable hands. It was 10 years ago today that the last recorded EF5 tornado touchdown. That day also happened to be when we held our annual field day activities. When the weather conditions deteriorated, we rapidly moved the entire student body into the basement of this building. There were 2 elementary schools in Moore, Oklahoma, Plaza Towers and Briarwood Elementary, that were not as fortunate as us, as their buildings took a direct hit. One of the stories to come from that tragedy occurred inside Plaza Towers. These kids, it hurts. It was about a 3rd grade teacher named Jennifer Doan. She was taking shelter with 11 of her students in a hallway when the tornado struck. Doan and her children were trapped when the walls of the corridor collapsed on top of them. Doan also happened to be 2 months pregnant at the time. She suffered severe injuries to her back, but did not lose her baby. She and 5 other students were pulled out, with the children suffering only minor to moderate injuries. Sadly, 6 of her students, along with a student from another 3rd grade class, died that day. I am telling you this story not because today is the anniversary of that tragedy, but to tell you that it is my belief that every one of these teachers I work with would have done the same thing as Miss Doan did. If you're a teacher or you ever taught at Christ King, raise your hand. People call me hero. Those are heroes that's taking care of your children. Those are my heroes. Thank you, guys. My next group to thank would be the parents who entrusted us with their most prized possessions, their children. You may have many options where to send your kids to school, and in most cases that decision is based upon what is the best environment for your child. Each year at our annual open house, I had the opportunity to visit prospective parents and students, and the best advice I could offer them was that if I still had school-aged children, they'd be enrolled in this school. Thank you, moms, dads, and caregivers for giving me the opportunity to be a part of your children's education and their development. It was an awesome experience. Thank you. Many of you are not aware of what I'm about to say next. That created any fear and anxieties? Relax, it's all good. When I was hired to become the computer teacher, it also came along with the additional responsibility to manage all the technology issues. With the exception of somewhere around Thanksgiving of my first year, I asked to meet with the lady who was our principal at the time. Anyway, from that meeting, a decision was made to hire an information technology manager. In my time at the school, there have been 4 different people hired for that position. The first was Jeff Kopp, who brought in a wealth of knowledge and made it so that I didn't have to stay at the school until close to midnight anymore. Jeff and I enjoyed a collaborative working relationship for years, and I am grateful for everything he taught me. Jeff eventually left the CK Nest and moved to Rose State College, where he continues to help students and faculty. Once he left, you might say that we had a couple of misfires. Two of those individuals left us high and dry. One left right before the school year began, and the other one left about a month in. I am happy to say that in regard to the IT department, we are now firing on all cylinders with Dakota Rogers on the job. I often say that I would rather hire a good person with little experience than hire one who comes with all the credentials but isn't a good fit. Dakota is a total package. Jeff and Dakota, if you're here, would you please raise your hand? I see Dakota. Jeff here? There's Jeff. You guys are two people behind the scenes of our classrooms that have made sure everything runs smoothly, and that in turn, it has allowed us to use technology to enhance learning. I thank you both. The next group is the reason why this school exists. It's the students. Because I am a fan of quotes, you're going to get another one. Todd Whitaker is the author of this one. The best part of being a teacher is that it matters. The hardest part about being a teacher is that it matters every day. Each day that I was at school, I kept that quote in the forefront of my mind. Because of the impact that positive role models had on me in my formative years, I wanted to pay it forward. Kids are like a mirror. What they see and hear, they do. Be a good reflection for them. That wisdom comes from Kevin Heath. So to anyone who was a student in my classroom over the years, I want you to know that your presence in my life has shaped me into a better person. If you are one of those unfortunate souls who were subjected to my musings, jokes, etc., would you please raise your hands? I want to see all my students. I pray that each of you benefited from my time with you. I know that I did. Another beautiful aspect about being a member of the CK family was put on display this past week as we came together to say goodbye once again to a young life ended too soon. All the things I have talked about this evening came close to never happening for me. My beloved mother, whose current health condition makes it too difficult for her to be here with us this evening, told me that within the first few months of my life that I came close to dying before I ever spoke my first words. Fortunately, the surgical hands and mind of a female doctor in 1958 kept me alive. Death is something I have escaped on multiple occasions, and I am not saying that to be braggadocious. When one of the first cars I ever owned rolled off the blocks and pinned my head against the concrete, I wondered why I lived. When a parachute jump went horribly bad and I came crashing through the branches of the tall North Carolina trees, I asked, why did I survive? Where did the strength to finish swimming across a lake that was way too big for me to attempt come from? God, He carried me across that lake. I had no way of making it. How did I survive the stupidity of my youth while under the influence of too much alcohol? God, thank you. In looking into the rear view of my life, the answer is clear today. God had other plans for me, and it is my prayer that you each have benefited. Oh, hit the wrong button. Where's my IT guy? I'll get there. Here we go. Alcohol was the last word, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. God had other plans for me, and it is my prayer that each of you have benefited from that decision. Before I close, I have one more group of people who are here with me tonight. Many of you don't know this because I never introduced two of my three children as stepchildren. My two non-DNA related children are Randy and Addison. I would ask Addison, oh, she is standing. I was going to ask her to stand up, but she's 8 months pregnant right now, so I didn't want to torture her. And each time I look at her, my back hurts. Today also happens to be your birthday. Thank you. Happy birthday, sweetie. Thank you to her husband, Trey, and Sloan, for all the blessings your presence in my life gives to me. Tatum, who is due to come into this world next month, if you can hear me, I love you already and can't wait to hear your sweet voice. Bring me the same satisfaction and joy that Sloan, Sophia, Olivia, Braylon, Arissa, and Kaylia do when they say the word Papa. Yes, those 6 grandchildren are all girls. What a blessing. Randy, your dedication to be a hardworking father who loves his 3 girls and wife more than himself tells me that I must have done something right in assuming my role as your father. Thank you for sticking with me for close to 40 years. I also thank you for choosing an equally loving and wonderful woman, Andrea, to be your wife and mother to your 3 girls, Kaylia, Arissa, and Braylon. I'm honored tonight that one of those girls, Kaylia, is here tonight with us. I'm going to have to get used to this thing, aren't I? There we go. Kaylia last week at this time was celebrating her college graduation with a nursing degree. Congratulations, Kaylia. I might add, just like her mother and grandmother, Debbie, she became a nurse. My 3rd child, and the only one who shares my DNA, I'm sorry, has also traveled with Randy and Kaylia from Colorado to share this evening with me. Brian, you were the impetus for me to leave that tile factory in Cincinnati and join the Army. To say that you were worth it is a huge understatement. Whenever people see us together, they will often say, based upon looks, there is no doubt that you two are related. When others brag about your wit, role as a husband and father, or your personality, I beam with pride because I wanted to grow up to be just like you. Son, like your brother Randy, you did an excellent job. Apologize. There we go. You did an excellent job of choosing a beautiful woman to be your wife, Trish, mother to your 2 daughters and your best friend. I love you, son, and I thank you for never giving up on me, because I was never going to give up on you. My final thank you is reserved for my wife, Debbie. For those who don't know, we were not a match made in heaven, but we are a match made online. When I sent her an instant message to her from udate.com on October the 15th, 2000, asking what she could tell me about being a teacher in Oklahoma, because I was still in uniform at the time, I never in my wildest dreams knew that it would lead to you standing by my side all these years later. Honey, your influence may have indirectly crossed many other people's lives here, because she taught nursing at OSU OKC for over 30 years. So I'm sure if you've ever been to a hospital, clinic, or somewhere, probably one of her students has helped you along the way. When we met, I had a ton of college credits hours, but no degree. Her encouragement pushed me to pursue my dream of becoming a school teacher. Debbie, I thank you for not listening to that coworker who, upon seeing a picture of me in uniform, told you to go the other way. In closing, let me extend a heartfelt thank you to the Christ the King family. Even though I'm not Catholic, you have adopted me, and you have never made me feel less than because of where I came from. The unity here is often referred to as the CK community, but to me, you will always be my CK family. So I end not with a goodbye, but I'll see you later, but not as often. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
It looks like it's a sports coat, but it's not. But this is from the school.
Oh, thank you.